There are marriages built on love. There are marriages built on convenience. And then there are marriages built on desperation, where two people drowning in separate oceans grab onto each other, not knowing one of them is an anchor. This is the story of Lena Morales and Dante Salvatore. She was dying slowly, one insulin vial at a time. He was dying violently, one enemy at a time. Their marriage was supposed to save them both. Instead, it destroyed an empire, exposed a decades-old conspiracy, and proved that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is survive when powerful people expect you to disappear. This isn't a love story. This is a war story, and love was just the weapon they didn't see coming. Lena Morales learned early that survival isn't poetic. It's counting pills, checking glucose levels at 3 a.m., singing in dive bars where the applause is drowned out by the sound of breaking glass. She was 27 when this story began, though her body felt decades older. Type 1 diabetes had been her shadow since childhood, a relentless companion that demanded constant attention, constant money, constant fear. Her mother used to say, "Mija, your voice will take you places." What she didn't say was that those places would be empty clubs where drunk patrons threw coins like insults, where promoters promised contracts and delivered nothing, where the only thing more uncertain than her next paycheck was her next breath. The night everything changed, Lena was performing at the Velvet Basement, a club that smelled like old cigarettes and broken dreams. She was halfway through a cover of Wicked Game, when her vision started to blur. She knew the signs. Blood sugar dropping. Hands trembling. The world tilting just slightly off its axis. But she kept singing. Because stopping meant admitting weakness, and weakness meant getting replaced by the 17-year-old with perfect skin and parents who could afford to let her sing for free. The last thing Lena remembered before hitting the floor was the spotlight, how it felt like being interrogated by God. Then darkness. Then voices. Call an ambulance. Check her pulse. Move. Now. That last voice was different. Calm. Commanding. A voice that didn't ask permission. Dante Salvatore wasn't supposed to be at the Velvet Basement that night. He owned half the city, including 3 upscale establishments where politicians and criminals drank the same expensive whiskey and pretended not to recognize each other. The Velvet Basement was beneath him, literally and figuratively. But his consigliere, Vincent, had mentioned a singer. "You should hear her, boss." Voice like broken glass, beautiful because it cuts. Dante went because Vincent's instincts had kept them alive for 15 years, and also because he was restless. The kind of restless that comes when you've built an empire and discovered it feels exactly like a cage. He arrived during Lena's final song, slipping into a corner booth where shadows pooled like spilled ink. His security team, 3 men in tailored suits with shoulder holsters that ruined the line of expensive fabric, stood at strategic points around the room. Then he heard her. Vincent was right. Her voice wasn't technically perfect. It cracked in places, wavered in others. But it carried something raw and real, the sound of someone who had genuinely suffered and transmuted that pain into something almost holy. When she collapsed, Dante's men moved before he could speak. Training overriding protocol. Marco, his head of security, was already calling their private physician. Vincent was clearing a path. And Dante found himself kneeling beside a woman he'd never met, checking her pulse with fingers that had choked the life from men who crossed him, now trembling with something uncomfortably close to fear. "Medic alert bracelet," Vincent noted, lifting her wrist. "Type 1 diabetic." At the hospital, Dante did what he did best. He gathered information. The intake nurse, intimidated by men in expensive suits, talked more than she should have. No insurance. No emergency contacts. Medical debt approaching 6 figures. Prescriptions she couldn't afford. A body slowly cannibalizing itself because American healthcare treated survival as a luxury purchase. Dante stayed in the waiting room for 3 hours, ignoring 12 calls from business associates, 2 from his lawyer, and 1 from his mother. When the doctor emerged, Dante stood. "She'll be okay," the doctor said, exhausted. This time. But without consistent treatment, without regular insulin. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Dante understood unfinished sentences. His life was built on them. He visited her apartment 4 days later. Lena lived in a 4th-floor walk-up in a building where the elevator had been broken since the Reagan administration. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and resignation. Someone's television blared through thin walls, broadcasting game shows like prayers to the gods of easy money. Dante knocked. Waited. Knocked again. "Go away," a voice called from inside. "I'm not interested in whatever you're selling." "I'm not selling anything, Miss Morales. I'm buying." Silence. Then the door cracked open, security chain still attached, and Lena's face appeared in the gap. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, skin pale, but her gaze was sharp. Suspicious. "Who are you?" "The man who paid your hospital bill." The door slammed shut. Dante smiled despite himself. Then it opened again, chain removed this time, and Lena stood in the doorway wearing pajama pants and a tank top, arms crossed, defiant despite obviously being terrified. "You paid my bill?" "I did." "Why?" "May I come in?" "No." "Miss Morales." "Lena. And I asked you a question. Why did you pay my hospital bill? What do you want?" Dante respected directness. It was rare in his world, where everyone spoke in metaphors and implications, where saying what you meant could get you killed. "I want to make you an offer." "I'm not sleeping with you." "I'm not asking you to." "Then what?" "Marry me." Lena laughed, a sharp, bitter sound like ice cracking. "Is this some kind of joke? Did Marco put you up to this?" She looked past him, as if expecting camera crews. "I'm serious." "You're insane." "Perhaps." "May I come in now?" This conversation would benefit from privacy. Lena stared at him for a long moment, weighing options with visible calculation. Then she stepped aside. Her apartment was small but obsessively clean. Books stacked on every surface. A keyboard in the corner. Walls covered with sheet music. Some printed, some handwritten. The refrigerator hummed loudly, struggling against summer heat. Dante sat on a worn couch without being invited. Lena remained standing, arms still crossed. "Talk," she said. "I'll pay for your medical treatment. All of it. Insulin, doctor visits, specialists, whatever you need. For the rest of your life." "In exchange for what?" "Marriage." "Why would you possibly?" "I need legal protection. The federal government is investigating my business interests. My accountant recently decided cooperation was preferable to loyalty. Asset forfeiture is imminent unless I can demonstrate that my wealth supports a legitimate household. A wife provides legal complications that buy time." Lena processed this. "You're a criminal." "I'm a businessman operating in gray areas." "That's what criminals say." Dante smiled. "Yes. And you think marrying some random girl you saw collapse in a bar will somehow help your legal situation?" "Marrying someone with documented financial need creates a paper trail demonstrating legitimate use of funds. Supporting a chronically ill spouse is sympathetic. Prosecutors hesitate to destroy families. It's not perfect, but it buys time." "Time for what?" "To liquidate certain holdings and establish operations in jurisdictions with less aggressive law enforcement." Lena sat down finally, on a chair across from him. "This is insane." "Yes. You're asking me to marry a criminal." "I'm offering you life. Everything else is semantics." "What's the catch?" "There's always a catch." Dante leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped. "The catch is that my world is dangerous. People who associate with me become targets. I can provide security, but I cannot provide safety. The distinction matters. Anything else?" "The marriage would be real legally, but not romantically. Separate bedrooms. No expectations of intimacy. You would maintain your independence while playing the role of wife in public settings. Think of it as performance art with excellent health insurance. Lena stood, walked to her window, looked out at the alley below where someone had abandoned a mattress months ago and no one had bothered to remove it. How long? 2 years minimum. 3 ideally. And after? Divorce. Amicable. You walk away with a settlement that ensures you never worry about insulin again. Why me? This question hung in the air. Dante considered lying. He was good at lying. Had built fortunes on carefully constructed deceptions. Instead, he told the truth. Because when I watched you collapse, I recognized something. You were dying but still singing. That kind of stubbornness appeals to me. And because you have nothing to lose, which makes you less likely to complicate matters with emotional attachments. You think I'm desperate. I think we both are. I'm simply offering a transaction that benefits us equally. Lena turned from the window. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow. After that, I'll find someone else. He stood, moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If you agree, you tell no one the real arrangement. Not friends, not family. The marriage must appear genuine. Lives depend on convincing performances. Whose lives? Currently, yours and mine. Potentially others, depending on how this plays out. Then Dante left, and Lena stood alone in her apartment, staring at the space where a stranger had just offered her a deal with the devil. Or perhaps an angel. She could no longer tell the difference. Lena called the number he'd left at 2:37 a.m. She'd spent hours researching Dante Salvatore online, finding surprisingly little. Some photographs at charity events. Board member listings for legitimate businesses. No criminal record. No scandals. Which meant either he was clean or he was very, very good. She suspected the latter. Miss Morales, Dante answered on the first ring, voice alert despite the hour. You've made a decision. If I do this, I have conditions. I'm listening. First, I continue performing. I don't give up music. Agreed. Second, I have complete access to my medical records and treatment decisions. You don't control my healthcare. Reasonable. Third, if at any point I feel unsafe, I can leave. No questions, no retaliation. Pause. That one is more complicated. Once you're in, you become a liability. People who leave my orbit don't always survive the departure. Then we don't have a deal. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll make an exception. But understand that leaving means witness protection, new identity, permanent separation from your current life. Still want that clause. Lena thought of her apartment, her keyboard, the open mic nights where she'd built something resembling community. Yes. Then we have an agreement. I'll send a car tomorrow at noon. Bring whatever matters to you. Everything else will be provided. Wait. But he'd already hung up. Lena sat on her floor, back against the wall, and wondered if she'd just agreed to salvation or damnation. Sometimes the line between them was thinner than paper. The car that arrived was a black Mercedes with windows tinted beyond legal limits. The driver, an older man with a face like carved granite, didn't speak. Just opened the door and waited. Lena had packed light. Clothes, medications, her mother's rosary, sheet music. Her entire life fit into 2 suitcases, which felt both depressing and liberating. The drive took 40 minutes, leaving the city's cramped urban core for suburbs where houses had gates and gates had guards. They turned onto a private road lined with oak trees, branches forming a tunnel that filtered sunlight into golden fragments. Then the house appeared. Calling it a house was like calling the ocean damp. It was an estate, 3 stories of modern architecture that somehow felt organic, as if it had grown from the earth rather than being built upon it. Glass and stone and wood blended seamlessly. Gardens surrounded the structure, maintained with obsessive precision. Vincent met her at the door. Miss Morales. Welcome. I'm Vincent Caruso, Mr. Salvatore's associate. I'll show you to your quarters. Your quarters. Not your room. The interior matched the exterior, expensive without being ostentatious. Art on the walls that Lena suspected was original. Furniture that looked comfortable enough to actually sit on. Everything carefully curated to suggest wealth without screaming it. Her quarters occupied the entire East Wing's second floor. Bedroom larger than her apartment. Bathroom with a soaking tub and shower that had more settings than her keyboard. Walk-in closet already stocked with clothes in her size. Private balcony overlooking gardens where fountains murmured like secrets. Mr. Salvatore will meet you for dinner at 7, Vincent said. Dress code is business casual. Kitchen staff can accommodate any dietary requirements related to your condition. Simply inform Rosa, and she'll ensure proper meal planning. He left her alone. Lena sat on the bed, a king-size mattress so soft it felt like floating, and laughed until she cried. 24 hours ago, she'd been counting coins for insulin. Now she lived in a palace owned by a criminal. They married 3 days later in a private ceremony that felt more like a business merger than a union. The officiant was a judge who owed Dante favors and asked no questions. The witnesses were Vincent and Rosa, the estate's house manager. No family. No friends. No flowers except what already grew in the garden. Lena wore a simple white dress purchased that morning. Dante wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her previous year's rent. Do you, Dante Salvatore, take this woman? The vows were standard. Generic. Words that billions had spoken before them. Words that meant everything and nothing. When Dante slipped the ring on her finger, platinum band with a diamond so large it felt obscene, his hands were steady. Lena's trembled. You may kiss the bride. They looked at each other, two strangers bound by paperwork and desperation. Dante leaned in, kissed her cheek, whispered, "Thank you." Then it was done. Legally, irrevocably, she was Lena Salvatore. The name felt like wearing someone else's skin. The reception was dinner for 4. Rosa had prepared Mediterranean food that was simultaneously elegant and comforting. The name felt like wearing someone else's skin. The reception was dinner for 4. Rosa had prepared Mediterranean food that was simultaneously elegant and comforting. They ate and made small talk about nothing important, while Vincent occasionally checked his phone and Dante seemed distracted. Later, alone in her wing, Lena looked at her ring. It caught light like captured fire. She thought about calling someone, but who? She had no family left, and friends had faded when she couldn't afford to keep up with dinners out and concerts. So she sat on her balcony, watching sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose, and wondered what she'd actually agreed to. The first week was carefully choreographed distance. They saw each other at breakfast. Brief, polite conversation over coffee and newspapers. Dante would disappear into his office or leave the estate entirely, returning late. Lena explored the house, discovered a music room with instruments she'd only dreamed of playing, spent hours at the piano while sunlight traced patterns on walls. Rosa explained the basic rules. Mr. Salvatore values privacy. His office is off-limits. The security team rotates every 12 hours. You'll recognize them by their suits and earpieces. Don't be alarmed. Cars are available if you need to go anywhere, but security accompanies all trips. It's for your safety. Safety. That word again. Implying danger. Lena met the security team gradually. Marco, who'd been at the bar that night. Elena, a woman who looked like a fashion model but moved like a panther. James, who spoke 3 languages and had eyes that never stopped scanning. They were polite but distant, treating her like precious cargo that might break. On the 8th day, Dante knocked on her door at midnight. "May I come in?" Lena, reading in bed, gestured him forward. He looked exhausted. Tie loosened, jacket discarded somewhere, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with scars she hadn't noticed before. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "About everything. The real situation you've entered." He sat in the chair by her window, ran hands through hair, sighed. My family built this empire over 3 generations. My grandfather started with shipping, legitimate trade that occasionally involved looking the other way. My father expanded into construction, waste management, businesses that straddled legal lines. I inherited an organization that makes millions through ventures that occupy gray areas of law. Gray areas. We move products that people want but governments restrict. We provide services that corporations need but can't officially acknowledge. We operate in spaces where regulations are unclear or unenforced. It's not drug trafficking or human trafficking or any Hollywood criminal enterprise. It's more mundane, more profitable, and almost impossible to prosecute because we maintain legal facades for everything. So you're not a mobster? Dante smiled, tired. I'm exactly a mobster. Just a modern one. We don't kill people in restaurant backrooms. We destroy them through lawsuits and accounting. Violence is expensive and attracts attention. Much more efficient to make enemies financially irrelevant. But you said people who associate with you become targets. Competitors occasionally make the mistake of thinking violence still works. They're wrong, but that doesn't stop them from trying. Hence the security. Lena processed this. Why are you telling me this now? Because tomorrow, we attend a charity gala. You'll meet people from my world. Wives of associates, business partners, politicians who take our money while pretending not to know its source. You need context to play your role convincingly. What role? The devoted wife. The woman who humanizes me. The proof that Dante Salvatore isn't a monster, just a man in love. We're not in love. No. But they need to believe we are. He stood, moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If anyone ever threatens you, if you ever feel unsafe, you tell me immediately. Not security. Me. Personally. Why? Because I gave you my word you'd be protected. I don't break my word. Then he was gone, and Lena sat alone with the realization that she'd married a man who dealt in shadows and called it business. The dress arrived that afternoon. Midnight blue silk that fit like it had been designed specifically for her body. Because it had. Rosa explained that Dante had hired a designer after their wedding, providing measurements and preferences Lena didn't remember sharing. He's observant, Rosa said, adjusting the dress. Notices things people don't realize they reveal. Which was either thoughtful or terrifying. Possibly both. Dante wore a tuxedo that transformed him from merely handsome into something almost dangerous. The kind of man who belonged in European casinos or on magazine covers titled 50 Most Powerful Men You'll Never Meet. The car ride was quiet. Nervous? He finally asked. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just follow my lead, smile, and remember, we're madly in love. The kind of love that's slightly embarrassing to witness. I'm not sure I can fake that. Dante took her hand, the gesture catching her off guard. Lena, he said, using her first name for the first time, you sang through a hypoglycemic crisis because stopping would mean weakness. You're an excellent performer. Just direct that energy differently. The gala was held at a museum that had been closed to the public for the evening. Hundreds of people in expensive clothes, drinking expensive wine, pretending their wealth wasn't built on other people's suffering. Dante kept his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through crowds, introducing her endlessly. My wife, Lena. Each time he said it, the word felt less alien. She smiled, shook hands, made small talk about nothing important, played the role, and watched. These people, they wore morality like costume jewelry, discarding it when convenient. The woman discussing charter schools funded with money from union-busting schemes. The man championing environmental causes while his company dumped chemicals into rivers. The politician supporting healthcare reform while accepting donations from pharmaceutical companies. Dante's world was corrupt. But it wasn't uniquely corrupt. It was just more honest about its corruption. You're doing wonderfully, Dante whispered during a lull. Several people have already mentioned how radiant you look. How obviously happy. I'm a good actress. Yes. You are. Then Antonio Marchetti approached. Lena felt Dante tense before she saw the man. Subtle shift in posture, barely perceptible except she'd been touching him all evening. Dante. And this must be the bride everyone's discussing. Antonio was older, 60s, with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. He moved like someone accustomed to deference. Antonio. Yes, this is my wife, Lena. Enchanted. Antonio took her hand, kissed it, held it slightly too long. You're quite beautiful. Dante always did have excellent taste. Thank you. Tell me, Lena, how did you two meet? Dante's been so secretive about his personal life. This was a test. She understood immediately. I was performing, she said smoothly. Singing at a venue Dante happened to visit. He claims it was my voice that caught his attention, but I suspect it was the dramatic collapse afterward. Polite laughter. She's being modest, Dante added. Her voice is extraordinary. And when someone that talented is suffering unnecessarily because our healthcare system values profit over lives, intervention seems morally required. Perfectly delivered. Sincere enough to be believable. Vague enough to avoid details. Antonio smiled. How romantic. A rescue. More like mutual salvation, Lena said. I rescued him from bachelorhood. More laughter, and Antonio moved on. But Lena had seen something in his eyes. Calculation. Who is he? She asked when they were alone. Competitor. He controls the southern ports. We've maintained uneasy peace for 5 years, but he's been making moves recently. Testing boundaries. He doesn't believe we're in love. No. But doubt isn't proof. As long as we maintain appearances, he can't act on suspicion. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and performances. Lena's feet hurt from heels she wasn't accustomed to wearing. Her face hurt from smiling. But she survived. In the car afterward, Dante loosened his tie, sighed. Thank you, he said. You exceeded expectations. Part of our contract. Still. You have a gift for reading people. Most don't notice Antonio's tests. I've been performing my entire life. You develop radar for hostile audiences. Dante looked at her, really looked, as if seeing something new. Indeed, he said softly. They rode the rest of the way in silence that felt less empty than before. The routine established itself. Public appearances twice a week. Charity events, business dinners, gallery openings. Each time, they played their roles flawlessly. Privately, they maintained careful distance. But distance is hard to maintain in constant proximity. Lena discovered Dante was an insomniac who wandered the house at 3 a.m., sometimes ending up in the music room where he'd sit and listen if she was playing. Dante discovered Lena sang in the shower, voice echoing through walls, and found himself manufacturing reasons to walk past her wing during morning hours. Small invasions of space. Incremental. One evening, they shared dinner, something unplanned, both finding themselves in the kitchen simultaneously, Rosa having left prepared meals before her weekend off. Join me, Dante offered. Sure. They ate on the terrace, watching sunset, making conversation that gradually shifted from superficial to genuine. Why music? Dante asked. My mother. She sang constantly. Happy, sad, angry, everything was music. When she got sick, when cancer took everything else, her voice was the last thing to go. I promised I'd keep singing. I'm sorry. Don't be. She had a good life. Better than she deserved statistically. Immigrant single mother who somehow raised a daughter with functioning morals and decent credit until medical debt destroyed that. Tell me about her. So Lena did. Stories poured out, childhood memories, her mother's terrible cooking, the way she'd dance in grocery store aisles when songs played overhead, her absolute certainty that Lena would be famous. She was wrong, Lena finished. I'm not famous. Just competent. Perhaps she meant a different kind of famous. The kind where people remember your name long after you're gone because you mattered to them personally. Lena looked at Dante, surprised by the insight. What about you? She asked. Why this life? Why not go legitimate? I tried. Dante refilled their wine. Got an MBA, worked at a Fortune 500 company, hated every moment. Corporate America is criminal enterprise with better branding. At least in my world, we don't pretend moral superiority. You could have done anything else. Perhaps. But family expectations are their own form of prison. My father built this empire. My grandfather before him. Walking away would mean declaring their lives wasted. I couldn't do that. Even though it might kill you. We're all dying. Question is whether we die for something meaningful. They talked until stars emerged, conversation flowing effortlessly, and Lena realized she was enjoying herself. Which was dangerous. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. But sitting there, watching Dante laugh at her stories about disastrous open mic nights, it felt perilously close to authentic. The shift happened gradually, then suddenly. 2 months into their arrangement, Lena woke in the middle of the night to screaming. She followed the sound to Dante's wing, a place she'd never entered, and found him thrashing in bed, caught in nightmare's grip. Dante. She shook his shoulder. Wake up. His eyes opened, but he wasn't seeing her. He grabbed her wrist, yanked her down, and for a terrifying moment Lena thought he might hurt her. Then recognition clicked. Lena. You were screaming. He released her immediately, sat up, breathing hard. I apologize. Nightmares. Occupational hazard. She should have left. Maintained boundaries. Instead, she sat on the edge of his bed. Want to talk about it? No. They sat in silence. People I've killed, he finally said. Not murdered. I'm not a murderer. But decisions I've made that led to deaths. Business choices that resulted in violence. Faces that appear when I sleep. How many? Fewer than you'd think. More than I can justify. Why tell me? Because you asked. And because pretending to be someone I'm not is exhausting. Lena understood that feeling intimately. I should go, she said. Stay. Please. So she did. Sat with him in darkness, 2 people pretending they weren't both terrified of different things, until dawn turned the sky pink and the moment passed. But something had changed. After that night, the walls between them began crumbling. It happened 3 months into their marriage, at a moment carefully designed to look accidental. They were attending a charity auction, one of those events where rich people bid absurd amounts on vacation packages to feel philanthropic. Lena wore red. Dante couldn't stop staring. You're supposed to be watching the auction, she whispered. I'm watching something far more interesting. The flirtation had become natural. Easy. Lines between performance and reality blurring. When they stepped onto the terrace for air, music drifted from inside, something slow and romantic. Dance with me, Dante said. There's no one watching. I know. So they danced. His hand on her waist. Her head against his shoulder. Moving to music that felt written specifically for this moment. This wasn't part of the contract, Lena murmured. No. It wasn't. We're supposed to be acting. I'm aware. Dante. He pulled back, looked at her, and Lena saw something in his eyes that terrified her. Want. Not the clinical want of a business arrangement. The raw, desperate want of someone who'd been alone too long. Tell me to stop, he said. She didn't. The kiss was inevitable. Soft at first, questioning, then deeper as months of tension and proximity and carefully maintained distance collapsed into this single moment. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Lena laughed shakily. We're idiots. Completely. This complicates everything. I know. They went back inside, maintained their performance, but everything had shifted. The marriage was no longer fake. Love in Dante's world wasn't soft. It was urgent, desperate, stolen moments between danger. They tried to maintain boundaries. Failed spectacularly. Lena would find Dante in the music room at midnight, listening to her play, and they'd talk until dawn. Dante would cook breakfast, terribly, burning eggs and setting off smoke alarms, just to see her laugh. They'd take walks through the estate gardens, security following at discreet distances, conversations ranging from philosophy to terrible jokes. The physical relationship developed slowly. Kisses that lasted hours. Falling asleep together watching movies neither of them paid attention to. The first time they made love, it was in the music room, spontaneous and intense, Lena pulling him close as if afraid he might disappear. Afterward, tangled together on the couch, Dante traced patterns on her skin. "This wasn't the plan," he said. "No. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not. You should be. I'm dangerous, Lena. My world destroys people. Then destroy me. I don't care." He kissed her forehead. "I care." They moved her belongings to his wing the next week. No discussion. Just Rosa quietly relocating clothes and personal items while Lena was out. "The staff knew before we did," Lena laughed when she discovered. "Rosa's perceptive. Or we were obvious. That too. But falling in love in a criminal empire comes with consequences." Antonio Marchetti noticed. Of course he did. He'd built an empire on noticing things. "Your wife seems genuinely happy," he mentioned at a business meeting. "How unusual for arrangements like yours." Dante's expression didn't change. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you? Come now, Dante. We're professionals. I know a strategic marriage when I see one. Though I'll admit, yours has developed complications. My personal life is everyone's business when you're in our position. Weakness is opportunity. Love is weakness." Threat delivered casually. Dante returned home tense. "We need to be more careful," he told Lena. "Careful how?" Antonio suspects. "He's looking for vulnerabilities." "So we go back to acting." "I don't know if we can. People see through performances eventually." They tried. Attempted to recreate the careful distance of early months. It lasted 3 days before Lena found Dante in his office at 2 a.m., surrounded by financial documents, looking haunted. "What's wrong?" "Everything's collapsing. The federal investigation is progressing faster than anticipated. Antonio's making moves on our territory. I have maybe 6 months before everything falls apart." "Then we have 6 months. Lena, I'm not leaving. Don't ask me to. I'm trying to protect you." "I don't want protection. I want you." He pulled her close, and they stood there in his office surrounded by evidence of an empire crumbling, holding each other like the world wasn't ending. But it was. Lena started noticing things. Phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered rooms. Vincent and Marco having hushed conversations that stopped the moment she appeared. Dante disappearing for entire days, returning with fresh cuts and bruises he claimed were from business meetings. She wasn't naive. She knew his world was violent. But knowing abstractly and witnessing concretely were different things. The night she discovered the truth started ordinarily enough. Dante was supposed to be at a late meeting. Lena was in the music room, working on a new song, when she heard raised voices from the East Wing. She followed the sound. Found a door she'd never noticed before, hidden behind a bookshelf in Dante's study, slightly ajar. She should have walked away. Instead, she pushed it open. Stairs descended into darkness. She took them. The basement was nothing like the elegant mansion above. Concrete floors. Exposed pipes. And in the center of the room, a man tied to a chair, bleeding. Dante stood in front of him, knuckles bruised, face cold. Vincent was there. Marco. Two other men she didn't recognize. I'll ask one more time, Dante said, voice eerily calm. Who told Antonio about the shipment? The man spit blood. Go to hell. Dante nodded to Marco. What happened next? Lena couldn't watch. She ran. Up the stairs, through the study, into her wing, into the bathroom where she vomited until there was nothing left. This was who she'd married. Not the man who made terrible breakfast. Not the man who listened to her play piano at midnight. This man. The one who hurt people. She was still sitting on the bathroom floor when Dante found her an hour later. He stood in the doorway, cleaned up now, no blood visible, but she could still see it. How much did you see? He asked quietly. Enough. He nodded. Sat down on the floor beside her, back against the wall. His name is Thomas. He's been working for me for 6 years. Last week, a shipment worth $3 million was intercepted by the DEA. Only 4 people knew the route. Thomas was one of them. So you're torturing him? I'm getting information that will prevent more people from dying. Antonio isn't interested in bloodless competition. If he thinks I'm vulnerable, he'll move against me. And not just me. My people. Their families. You. Don't use me to justify this. I'm not justifying anything. You asked what I was doing. I'm protecting what's mine. By becoming a monster? Dante looked at her, something broken in his eyes. I've always been a monster, Lena. You just chose not to see it. Love doesn't change what I am. It just makes you care that I'm damned. I married you for insulin, she whispered. Not this. I know. I can't be married to someone who tortures people. Then leave. The words hung between them. Just like that. Just like that. I'll arrange witness protection. New identity. You'll be safe, medically cared for, and you'll never have to see me again. You'd let me go? I promised you could leave if you felt unsafe. I keep my promises. Lena stared at him, this man who'd saved her life, who'd fallen in love with her, who was offering her freedom even though it would destroy him. I need time to think, she said. Take all the time you need. He stood, walked to the door, paused. For what it's worth, he said. I'm sorry you saw that. Not sorry I did it. Just sorry you had to witness who I really am. Then he left her alone with an impossible choice. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat on her balcony, watching stars, thinking about morality and survival and where the line existed between the two. Her mother used to say, Mija, the world isn't black and white. It's gray, and we're all just trying to find the lightest shade we can live with. What shade was she living with now? At dawn, Rosa brought coffee. He didn't sleep either, Rosa said quietly. Sat in his office all night, staring at papers but not reading them. You know what happened. I've worked for this family for 20 years. I know everything that happens in this house. And you're okay with it? The violence. Rosa sat down in the chair beside her. Let me tell you about Dante Salvatore. When his father died, this organization was chaos. Different factions fighting for control. People dying in the streets. Dante was 24 years old, fresh out of business school, and everyone thought he'd be weak. Easy to manipulate. What happened? He ended the violence in 3 months. Not by being crueler than his father. By being smarter. He negotiated treaties, established rules, made it more profitable to cooperate than compete. Under his leadership, this organization has killed fewer people than any legitimate corporation with similar revenue. That doesn't make it right. But it makes it better. He's still a criminal. Yes. And you're still benefiting from his crimes. That insulin you inject, paid for with money from illegal operations. This house, built on bribes and extortion. That beautiful ring on your finger, purchased with blood money. Lena looked at her wedding ring, suddenly heavy. You can't absolve yourself by claiming ignorance anymore, Rosa continued, not unkindly. You know what he is. You know what he does. The question isn't whether you can change him. It's whether you can live with yourself while loving him anyway. Rosa left. Lena sat alone with truth she couldn't escape. She found Dante in his office at noon. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, still wearing yesterday's clothes. I'm not leaving, she said. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. Lena. But I have conditions. New ones. I'm listening. No torture. I don't care about your justifications. Find another way to get information. That might not always be possible. Then make it possible. You're supposedly brilliant. Figure it out. What else? I want transparency. No more hidden rooms. No more secrets about what you're doing. If you're going to do terrible things, you don't get to hide them from me. That will be difficult to witness. I know. But I can't love someone I don't really know, even if knowing destroys us both. Dante stood, walked around his desk, stopped in front of her. Why? He asked. Why stay? You could be free. Because freedom without you doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like running away. And I'm tired of running from hard things. I'm going to disappoint you, hurt you. My world will corrupt you. Probably. But leaving won't uncorrupt me. I'm already complicit. At least if I stay, I can try to be a conscience you actually listen to. I don't deserve you. No, you don't. But love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And I'm choosing you. Even though you're a monster. Even though this is probably the worst decision I'll ever make. He kissed her then, desperate, grateful, terrified. I'll try, he whispered against her lips. To be better. To be worthy of this choice. Don't try for me. Try because you want to be someone who deserves to be loved. It was the beginning of something new. Not redemption. Not absolution. Just two broken people trying to build something honest in a world built on lies. 2 weeks later, everything went to hell. Lena was at a cafe, having lunch with Elena, who'd somehow become a friend despite being security, when the bomb went off. Not in the cafe. 3 blocks away. But close enough that the ground shook, windows shattered, and Elena immediately threw herself over Lena, shielding her with her own body. Stay down. Elena was already on her phone, talking rapid-fire Italian to someone. We need to move. Now. What's happening? Your husband's warehouse just exploded. This is either a distraction or the opening move of a war. Either way, we're exposed. They ran to the car. Marco was driving, appearing from nowhere, face grim. The drive back to the estate was tense. Elena kept checking her phone, relaying information. Casualties unknown. Fire department responding. Dante's unaccounted for. Lena's heart stopped. What do you mean unaccounted for? He was supposed to be at the warehouse, meeting with suppliers. No one's reached him. Try again. We're trying. The estate was chaos when they arrived. Security team mobilized. Vincent coordinating from the study. People she'd never seen before carrying weapons that definitely weren't legal. Where is he? Lena demanded. Vincent looked up, relief crossing his face. Mrs. Salvatore. Thank God. Dante will be. Where is he? We don't know. He left the warehouse 10 minutes before the explosion. Should have been here by now. His phone's going straight to voicemail. Lena felt ice in her veins. Antonio, she said. We're working on that assumption. Then what are we doing standing here? We need to find him. With respect, ma'am, we need to secure you first. If this is Antonio making a move, you're the primary target. You're Dante's weakness. The words were barely out of Vincent's mouth when Lena's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello, Lena. Antonio's voice, smooth and dangerous. We need to talk. Where is he? Lena's hand trembled. Your husband. Safe. For now. Depends entirely on our conversation. Vincent was already tracing the call, gesturing frantically to his team. What do you want? Lena asked, surprisingly steady. A meeting. You and me. Alone. Tonight at 9. I'll send location details in 1 hour. If I refuse, then I send Dante back to you in pieces, starting with his hands. The same hands that killed my son. The line went dead. Lena stood frozen. What did he say? Vincent demanded. She told him. Absolutely not, Vincent said immediately. It's a trap. He'll kill you both. He has Dante. He says he has Dante. Could be a lie to draw you out. Could be the truth. Either way, I have to go. Mrs. Salvatore. Lena. My name is Lena. And I'm going. You can either help me or get out of my way. Vincent stared at her, seeing something he hadn't noticed before. You're just like him, he said quietly. Stubborn. Reckless. Willing to die for the people you love. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Fine. We go. But my way. With precautions. For the next hour they planned. Elena would wire Lena, hidden microphone that Antonio's security would miss. Marco would position snipers at the location once they knew it. Vincent would coordinate extraction. But ultimately, Lena would be alone in a room with a man who wanted her dead. There's something you should know, Vincent said as they waited. About Antonio's son. Dante killed him? Yes. 5 years ago. But it wasn't murder. It was defense. Vincent pulled up a file on his computer. Police reports. Photographs. Medical records. Antonio's son, Marco Jr., was a sadist. Enjoyed hurting people. Women especially. He raped and killed 3 women we know about. Probably more. Dante found out, confronted him, gave him the chance to turn himself in. What happened? Marco Jr. attacked Dante with a knife. In front of witnesses. Dante killed him in self-defense. Antonio blamed Dante anyway. Said he should have looked the other way. So this has been building for 5 years. Longer. Antonio's been planning this since his son died. Waiting for Dante to give him an opening. Love was the opening. The location came through. An abandoned factory on the waterfront. Classic criminal meeting place. They left at 8, arrived early to scout. Marco positioned his team. Elena checked the wire 3 times. At 8:55, Lena walked into the factory alone. Antonio was waiting in the center of the main floor, surrounded by his men. And tied to a chair, bloodied but alive, was Dante. Their eyes met. His filled with rage and terror and something that looked like pride. You shouldn't have come, he called out. Probably not, Lena agreed. But I have terrible decision-making skills. Ask anyone. Antonio laughed. I like her, Dante. She's got spine. Shame I have to kill her. You'll die screaming if you touch her, Dante said, voice flat. Promising. Perhaps. But you'll die first. And you'll watch her die before I end you. That's the price for killing my son. Your son was a monster who deserved worse than a quick death, Dante said. I regret nothing. Antonio struck him, hard enough to snap his head back. Lena flinched but didn't move. Enough, she said clearly. You wanted to meet with me. Here I am. Let him go. Why would I do that? Because you're not actually a monster. You're a father who lost a child. I understand grief. But killing us won't bring Marco Jr. back. No. But it will make me feel better. Will it? Or will it just start a war that destroys everything you've built? Dante's people won't let this go unanswered. You'll lose half your organization in retaliation. Is revenge worth that? Antonio considered her. You're smarter than I expected. But not smart enough. This isn't just about my son. It's about power. Dante's been weak since he married you. Love made him vulnerable. His organization is fracturing. This was inevitable. Then kill me, Lena said. Let him live. You get your revenge. He learns his lesson about love being weakness, and you avoid the war. No. Dante struggled against his restraints. Don't you dare. Interesting proposal, Antonio mused. Self-sacrifice. Very romantic. But insufficient. He pulled out a gun. You both die. Tonight. Together. There's poetry in that, don't you think? He aimed at Lena. Everything happened at once. Glass shattered as Marco's snipers took their shots. Antonio's men returned fire. Dante, hands still bound, threw himself and the chair sideways, taking out Antonio's legs. Elena burst through a side entrance, weapon drawn. And Lena, remembering Elena's self-defense training, grabbed a piece of rebar and swung at the nearest guard. Chaos. Beautiful, violent chaos. When the smoke cleared, Antonio was in custody, 3 of his men were dead, and Dante was finally free. He reached Lena in 3 strides, pulled her close, checked her for injuries with shaking hands. You brilliant, reckless, insane woman. You could have died. So could you. Guess we're even. We're leaving. Tonight. Disappearing. I'm done with this life. Dante. I almost lost you. Nothing else matters. They made it halfway home before federal agents blocked their route. Special Agent Sarah Chen emerged from an unmarked car, FBI badge gleaming under streetlights. Dante Salvatore. Lena Salvatore. We need to talk. Vincent, driving, looked at Dante in the rearview mirror. Boss. Let's hear what they want. They sat in the back of a government SUV, surrounded by agents, while Sarah laid out their situation. We've been building a RICO case against your organization for 3 years, she said. We have your accountant's testimony. Your financial records. Enough evidence to put you away for 20 years minimum. Then why are we having this conversation instead of being arrested? Dante asked. Because Antonio Marchetti is a bigger fish. He's connected to trafficking operations spanning 6 states. We want him. And you can help us get him. In exchange for what? Immunity. Witness protection. New identities. You walk away clean. Dante looked at Lena. This was it. The exit he'd been planning. The escape from a life that had nearly killed them both. What do you need? Lena asked. Testimony. Financial records linking Antonio to his operations. Evidence that will hold up in court. When? Trial starts in 3 months. Until then, you'd be in protective custody. What about my people? Dante asked. The ones who've been loyal. We're not interested in low-level operators. Help us get Antonio, and we'll recommend leniency for anyone who cooperates. Dante was quiet for a long moment. I need guarantees. In writing. Protection for my people. Medical coverage for my wife. Complete immunity. Done. And one more thing. I want Rosa, Vincent, Elena, and Marco relocated with us. Their family. Sarah considered this. Unusual. But acceptable. Then we have a deal. The next 3 months were surreal. They lived in a safe house in suburban Maryland, protected by agents who tried very hard to pretend this was normal. Rosa cooked. Vincent handled logistics. Elena and Marco maintained security protocols they no longer needed. And Lena and Dante tried to build something resembling a normal life while preparing to destroy Antonio's empire in court. What will you do after? Lena asked one night. They were lying in bed, Dante's arms around her, both pretending they weren't terrified. I don't know. I've been a criminal my entire adult life. I'm not qualified for much else. You have an MBA. From 15 years ago. Using a degree obtained with dirty money. So we start over. Completely. You could teach. Consult. Hell, write a book about organizational management. Who'd want to read that? Everyone. How to Build an Empire Without Getting Killed, a former crime boss's guide to business. He laughed despite himself. That's terrible. But accurate. What about you? What will you do? Sing. Like I always wanted. Maybe teaching. I've always been good with kids. You'd be an amazing teacher. We could be normal people. We were never normal, Lena. That's not a bad thing. The trial came faster than expected. Lena sat in the gallery, watching Dante testify against the man who tried to kill them both. He was calm, precise, devastating. Every question, he answered with documented evidence. Every claim, he supported with financial records. Antonio's lawyers tried to break him. Failed. When it was over, when the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts, Dante walked out of that courthouse a free man for the first time in his life. They chose Montana, a place where no one knew them, where the nearest neighbor was 3 miles away, where Lena could sing in the morning without worrying about who might hear. The house was modest compared to the estate. 2 stories. Wood and glass. A music room that overlooked mountains. Rosa lived in the guest house with her husband, who'd finally retired after 30 years of pretending not to know what she did for work. Vincent opened a consulting firm, advising legitimate businesses on security. Elena and Marco bought a ranch nearby, raising horses and pretending they'd always been ordinary people. Dante struggled at first. Too quiet. Too peaceful. Too far from the constant adrenaline of his former life. He'd wake at 3 a.m., reaching for a phone that no longer received urgent calls. He'd tense at unexpected sounds, hand moving toward weapons he no longer carried. But gradually, he learned to breathe. Lena taught music at the local high school, discovering she loved it. Dante started consulting for businesses, applying his strategic mind to legal problems. They were happy. Not perfectly. Not without scars and nightmares and moments where the past reached forward to grab them. But happy. 1 year later, on their anniversary, they drove to a lake where mountains reflected in water like a painting. Do you regret it? Lena asked. Giving up everything? Dante looked at her. Really looked, the way he had that first night in the hospital when he decided she was worth saving. I gave up an empire, he said. And gained a life. That's not a loss. You miss it sometimes. I can tell. I miss the certainty. Knowing who I was. What I did. Having purpose. And now I wake up next to you. I teach people how to build something without destroying others. I sleep without nightmares most nights. It's not the life I planned. But it's a life I can be proud of. I'm proud of you. Why? I didn't become a good person. I just stopped being actively evil. That's more than most people manage. And you did it for the right reasons. Not because the law forced you. Because you wanted to be someone I could love without shame. Do you love me without shame? Most days. Some days I remember who you were and I wonder if I'm crazy. But then I see who you're trying to be, and I remember why I stayed. They sat in silence, watching sunset paint the sky in colors that didn't have names. Thank you, Dante said finally. For what? For collapsing in that bar. For saying yes to an insane proposal. For staying when you saw who I really was. For being stubborn enough to save me from myself. Thank you for paying my hospital bill. Best investment I ever made. Is that all I am? An investment? No. You're the only thing in my life that was never transactional. The only choice I made with my heart instead of my head. How'd that work out? I lost everything and gained something worth more. You tell me. Lena kissed him as the sun disappeared and stars emerged. It worked out pretty well, she said. The documentary premiered on a Tuesday. The Salvatore tapes. Inside America's most unusual RICO case. Lena watched it alone in their living room, Dante having refused to attend. I lived it, he'd said. Don't need to relive it. But Lena wanted to see how they'd tell their story. The producers had been respectful, focused on the legal case against Antonio rather than gratuitous details of Dante's criminal career. They'd interviewed Sarah Chen, now promoted to Director of Organized Crime. The Salvatore case changed how we approach RICO prosecutions, she said on screen. Dante's cooperation took down not just Antonio Marchetti, but 17 related criminal enterprises. It was unprecedented. They'd interviewed some of Dante's former associates, now legitimate businessmen. He gave us an out, one said. Could have let us go down with Antonio. Instead, he negotiated immunity for anyone willing to cooperate. He saved lives. They'd even interviewed survivors of Marco Jr.'s attacks. Justice is complicated, one woman said. Dante Salvatore killed the man who raped me, then helped put away the man who protected him. I don't forgive Dante for his crimes, but I'm grateful he finally did something right. At the end, they showed recent footage of Dante teaching a business ethics class at the local community college. Do you think people can change? The interviewer asked him. Dante's answer was careful. I think people can make better choices. Whether that's change or just improvement, I don't know. But I know I sleep better now than I did when I ran an empire. That has to count for something. Do you regret your criminal past? I regret the harm I caused. I don't regret the path that led me here. Everything I did, every choice I made, led to my wife. And she's worth any price I had to pay. The documentary ended. Lena sat in darkness, crying for reasons she couldn't fully articulate. Grief for who they'd been. Gratitude for who they'd become. Dante found her there. Sat beside her, pulled her close. You watched it. I did. And they made us seem almost heroic. We weren't. No. We were desperate people making desperate choices. Do you think we're good people now? I think we're trying. That's all anyone can do. Lena rested her head on his shoulder. Outside, snow was starting to fall, covering Montana in white like absolution they hadn't earned but were learning to accept anyway. 5 years after their marriage, 7 months after the documentary aired, Lena gave birth to a daughter. They named her Grace. Not for religious reasons, but because grace was what they'd been given when they didn't deserve it. Grace was what they tried to offer each other every day. Grace was the only honest thing left in a life built on lies that had somehow become truth. Dante held his daughter in the hospital, this tiny human who shared his blood but not his sins, and wept. She'll never know who I was, he said. She'll know who you are, Lena corrected. That's better. What if I fail her? What if I can't be what she needs? You were a crime boss who learned to love. You survived federal investigations and assassination attempts. I think you can handle diaper changes and bedtime stories. Those might be harder. Probably. But you won't be alone. We'll figure it out together. Like everything else. Rosa arrived with food, because of course she did. Vincent brought expensive baby clothes that were completely impractical. Elena and Marco brought a massive teddy bear that wouldn't fit in the nursery. And Dante's former associates, now legitimate businessmen, sent cards and gifts, each one a reminder that he'd given them the chance to be better. That night, Lena woke to find Dante sitting in the rocking chair, Grace sleeping on his chest, both of them peaceful in ways that shouldn't have been possible. What are you thinking? She whispered. That I killed people. Hurt people. Built an empire on suffering. And somehow, impossibly, I'm allowed to have this. To have you. To have her. It doesn't make sense. Life rarely does. I don't deserve this happiness. No, you don't. Neither do I. I benefited from your crimes. Lived in luxury bought with blood money. We're both complicit. So what do we do with that? We try to earn it. We raise a good human. We help people. We're honest about our past and intentional about our future. And we accept that redemption isn't a destination. It's a direction. As long as we're moving toward better, we're doing okay. Dante looked at his daughter, this impossibly small person who represented everything good he'd somehow created out of a life of bad choices. I love you, he said to Lena. For staying. For seeing the worst of me and choosing to believe in the best. I love you too. For giving me life when I was dying. For becoming someone worthy of the second chance you gave us both. They sat in comfortable silence, this family built on fake marriages and real love, on desperation and choice, on sin and grace. And outside, the world continued spinning, indifferent to their story, while they built something honest in the wreckage of everything they destroyed. This is the story of Lena and Dante Salvatore. A woman dying slowly who married a man dying violently. They didn't find love in a bar. They found survival. Everything else came later. The marriage that was supposed to save them both nearly destroyed them instead. But somewhere between the performance and the reality, between the contracts and the connection, between who they were and who they wanted to be, they found something real. Not redemption. Not absolution. Just two broken people who decided broken together was better than whole apart. Dante gave up an empire. Lena gained a life. And together, they proved that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is survive when powerful people expect you to disappear. Love didn't save them. But it gave them a reason to save themselves. And in a world built on transactions and violence and carefully maintained lies, that was miracle enough.